Hello, my name is Francis, and I used to believe my family would never abandon me. Then one night, my sister blamed me for her divorce. My mother slapped me. My father stood silent. They threw my suitcase onto the porch and called me a curse. They changed the locks on the house, on their hearts, and just like that, I was out. But what if I told you that wasn't the worst part? What if the real betrayal had started years earlier, hidden in birthday speeches, passed down in silence, stitched into heirlooms that never reached my hands? What happens when your own blood rewrites your life without you? Would you stay quiet, or would you tell the truth? I didn't expect to see Celine's car in the driveway when I got home that Thursday. The porch light above flickered like it always did, half dead, casting long shadows over the welcome mat that never truly welcomed me. I just clocked out from a 10-hour shift at the center, my feet swollen from standing most of the day. I had planned to make a sandwich, take a long shower, and call Marin like I'd promised her I would. But as soon as I opened the front door, I heard Celine's voice, raised, frantic. She was in the kitchen, pacing like a storm was trapped inside her ribcage. Her hair was messy, makeup smeared under her eyes. She didn't look like the poised college lecturer my parents always boasted about. She looked like someone who had already rehearsed her meltdown. "I filed for divorce," she announced before I could even put my bag down. 6 months. He's been cheating on me for 6 whole months. I blinked. Wait, what? Calder cheated? "With that girl you introduced him to," she hissed, her eyes locking on mine like I was the one in bed with him. "Emily? Your friend? You gave her to him." I laughed out of shock. "Emily? We only had coffee once and she asked about his dietitian license, that's all. He offered to help her gain weight, remember?" She pointed at me, trembling. "You handed him to her on a silver platter. Don't act innocent." Before I could respond, Maura came around the corner. Her lips were pressed into that tight, familiar line. She didn't ask me if it was true, didn't ask Celine for proof. She just stepped forward and the slap cracked through the air before I even registered her movement. I froze. My cheek burned hot, stinging and pulsing, but the pain wasn't the worst part. It was the finality of it, the fact that my mother, my own mother, chose to believe my sister so completely, so immediately, that she'd put her hand on me. Oren stood behind her, silent, his arms crossed like a spectator who didn't buy a ticket, but stayed anyway. No one said anything for 5 long seconds. I could hear the fridge humming behind me. I could hear the buzz of the porch light. I could hear my heart thrumming in my ears like a drum out of sync. I took a step back. I began. "Don't," Maura cut in. "Your things are already outside. We talked about it. Just go." I blinked. "You planned this? We gave you a roof," she snapped. "And this is how you repay us. You've always brought problems into this house." That's when I realized this wasn't about Calder or Emily or anything I'd done. This had been decided long before tonight. I turned on my heel and walked to my room. My hands trembled as I opened drawers, but most were empty, clothes gone, desk cleared. Even my photo of Grandma was missing from the shelf. They had cleaned me out of my own room. "Don't bother," Maura said from the doorway. "It's all outside." I didn't look at her. I zipped up the one bag I had left, the emergency bag I never thought I'd use, and walked past her. Outside, the air was humid. My suitcase sat slumped on the front lawn like a dog left behind. The porch light flickered once, then died. I reached for my key, muscle memory, and slipped it into the lock. It didn't turn. They had already changed it. It wasn't even 9 p.m. The stars weren't fully out yet. But I stood there like a fool, staring at the door I used to walk through every night, the one that smelled like wood polish and chili powder, the one I once believed would always let me back in. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 4% battery. No charger. I had left it in the kitchen. I dragged the suitcase down the porch steps. Each wheel thumped like a heartbeat, loud, deliberate, final. No one came out. No one shouted after me. The only sound was the sharp click of the lock turning again behind me. The door that brought me into this family had now locked me out of it. I walked to the end of the driveway, set my suitcase down, and looked back one last time. The curtains were closed. The light was off. It was like I'd never been there at all. "I guess it's official now," I whispered to the dark. "I don't belong." The words stayed with me long after I walked away from the house. I didn't belong. That wasn't just a realization. It felt like a verdict. I kept walking. My suitcase clattered behind me like it was protesting every step. Round Rock wasn't a big town, but it felt endless that night. Every street looked the same in the dark, dim porch lights casting long shadows over silent sidewalks. I passed closed shops, a bar that had already emptied out, and finally a gas station with one humming light over the entrance. It wasn't even 11 yet, but it felt like the world had already gone to bed without me. I pushed open the door to the gas station, the bell overhead jingling like a bad joke. The clerk didn't even look up. I grabbed a bottle of water, walked to the counter, and handed over my last $5 bill. Outside, I sat down on a concrete bench along the side of the building. The only outlet I could find was half exposed, corroded around the edges. Still, I plugged in my phone. The screen lit up. 3 missed texts from Marin. One call from earlier that I hadn't even noticed. Battery 6%. Enough for one call. I stared at my contact list. The only number I pressed was Dad's. It rang twice. Then he picked up. "Yeah?" His voice was sharp, already tired. "Dad, it's me." Silence. "I'm not asking to come home. Just for tonight. One night. I'll be gone in the morning." Another pause. "You've done enough damage, Francis. Don't call here again." The line went dead. I didn't even cry. I just sat there, letting the cold bench leach the heat from my legs. My phone dimmed, then died completely, leaving me in a dull blue wash of light from the flickering gas station sign. With nowhere else to go, I rolled my suitcase to the side alley and curled myself up against the wall. The concrete was cold and smelled like oil. A broken neon sign buzzed overhead. I lay there, curled up around my knees, letting the night swallow me whole. Memory crept in. It always does when there's nowhere to run. Celine's 10th birthday. I was 8. Mom had made a pink cake with white roses, the kind Celine always begged for. But when we got to the party, late because I had gotten carsick, the cake was already ruined. It had fallen, collapsed in the center. I barely got my shoes off before Celine screamed, "Why did you touch it?" I hadn't even seen the cake, but her words stuck. And Mom? She didn't ask questions. She just muttered, "Why is it always something with you?" That pattern never stopped. When our dog died and I was 6, Mom cried for hours. And at some point in the middle of her sobbing, she'd looked at me and said, "You bring bad luck. Ever since you were born, it's been one thing after another." I was too young to understand what she meant then, but the words rooted themselves quietly, like mold in the walls. When I caught pneumonia at 13 and missed Celine's piano recital, she told everyone, "She's always sick, always ruining things." No one corrected her. No one said, "That's not fair," because they didn't think it was untrue. And every time there was a school play, a family vacation, a photo op, somehow I was always the one cut out of the picture, the one who wasn't quite right. The lighting was wrong, I wasn't smiling enough. My dress didn't fit, my hair wasn't brushed properly. There was always a reason to crop me out. The phrase, "she's a curse," wasn't said often, but it didn't need to be. It lived in the looks, in the decisions made behind closed doors, in the absence of my name on Christmas cards and the extra space at dinner tables that was never mine. I sat there against the wall until my neck cramped and my back begged for something softer. But I didn't move. I couldn't. The weight of all those years, all those unspoken accusations, they pinned me down harder than the night chill. Eventually, I checked my phone again. Dead. I fumbled in my bag and pulled out the portable charger I had half forgotten I owned. Miraculously, it still held some juice, just enough to light the screen one more time. A missed call from Marin. That name, her name, felt like a life raft in the middle of a sinking ship. She was the only one who had never made me feel like a shadow. 2 years ago, she'd moved to Denver, sent birthday cards every single year without fail, even when I never responded. She was the only person who still used my full name. Not a nickname, not a joke. If no one else picked up, maybe she would. I didn't call her yet. I didn't want to sound like this, like roadkill, like a ghost, but I made a quiet promise to myself. If tomorrow looks like today, I'll try her. And if she doesn't answer, I'll figure out the next step. And if she does, maybe the curse they named me won't be the end of my story. I looked up at the broken sign above me. It used to say, "ICE," in bold red letters. Now, only the I flickered faintly. Before I closed my eyes, I whispered into the dark. They called me a curse. Fine. Let's see how far a curse can go. The night finally gave way to dawn, but it didn't feel like a new day. I'd spent it wrapped in someone else's jacket, and old friends, curled up on their living room couch. The kind of friend who doesn't ask questions, who just unlocks the door and points to where the towels are without judgment. I didn't say much, just mumbled that I needed a place for a night or two. Sometime after the sun rose and my body stopped trembling from cold and fatigue, I plugged in my phone with a cable she found at the bottom of a junk drawer. It took its time turning on, like it was trying to decide if it still trusted me. When the screen lit up, my eyes went to the notifications first, missed calls, some spam texts. And then, one email stood out. The subject line was short, almost clinical, but it grabbed my chest like a fist. "You deserve the truth. CP." I froze. CP? Calder Pierce. I opened it slowly, almost afraid of what I might see. The first line hit harder than any slap ever had. "Francis, I owe you more than silence." It wasn't short, it wasn't cold. It was the kind of email you only write when you've been carrying guilt for years and you're finally ready to set it down. He said Celine lied. Said he never cheated, never even looked at another woman, until she told him he had. "She'd used me as a cover," Calder wrote. Told her friends, told our family that I introduced her to some guy named Leo, that I set up secret meetups, that I encouraged it. She spun it all so convincingly, even Calder believed I was part of it. "I blocked you not because I thought you were guilty," he wrote, "but because I couldn't look at you without seeing what I'd lost, and I blamed you for that." There were attachments, screenshots of texts between Celine and someone named Leo, dates, times, locations, explicit enough that the narrative could no longer hold. She wrote things like, "He doesn't suspect a thing. Francis thinks she's helping a friend get vocal coaching." I couldn't breathe for a moment, not because of shock, but because of relief. The kind that doesn't come with joy, but still feels like breathing after being held underwater. She'd blamed me for her affair. And they believed her, all of them. He ended the email with, "I don't expect forgiveness." I just wanted you to know the truth. I stared at my phone for a long time. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, calm, almost too calm. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I called Marin. Her voice came through like static at first, then cleared. Frances? I didn't say hello. I didn't even greet her. I just said, I have something to tell you. But first, can I ask you something? She was quiet. Did you ever notice anything between Celine and someone else? Anything that didn't sit right? Marin didn't hesitate. Yes. That word wasn't a shock, but it still landed like a weight on my chest. I didn't know what to do with it at the time, she said. I saw her once, with some guy at the arts center. She looked nervous. He was touching her wrist like they knew each other. I didn't say anything because I knew no one would believe me. Did you ever mention it to anyone? No, but I recorded them. Not because I thought she was cheating, just because the way she looked at me afterward made my skin crawl. I kept the clip in case she ever tried something. Can you send it to me? I already did. Check your inbox. I looked. There it was. A short video, grainy but clear enough, Celine laughing in a way she never did around Calder. Holding a man's hand in the hallway of the community center, looking over her shoulder like she knew she was doing something wrong. Marin's voice came through the phone again. I always believed you, Frances. I just didn't know how to help. You just did, I whispered. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't just a name to erase from the family tree. I was someone who had been hurt, and finally, someone else saw it. That afternoon, I opened a new Google Doc and titled it, Timeline. Not for revenge, not for public shaming, just for truth. I listed the dates from Calder's email, copied the messages, added Marin's video, wrote out my memories, birthdays, dinners, moments when something had felt off, but I couldn't put a name to it. It wasn't about exposing anyone. It was about not letting myself be erased again. I drafted a reply to Calder. Thank you. I'm not sure what I'll do with this yet. But I won't waste it. I didn't hit send. I just saved it and sat there, still, steady, but no longer silent. I didn't send the message to Calder. I just closed the laptop and let the quiet surround me. There was something final in the air, like a page had turned without needing to slam the book shut. But I wasn't done reading. I still had to know how deep Celine's lies went. The next afternoon, I stopped by a little cafe tucked between a thrift shop and a bookstore in Austin. Grandma and I used to sit here when I was in college. We'd share a slice of pecan pie, and she'd call the waitress darlin' like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hadn't been back in years. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window. That's when I noticed her. A woman, maybe mid-40s, sitting across the room, laughing with someone over a crossword puzzle. On her neck hung a necklace I hadn't seen since the day I was thrown out. Gold chain, oval pendant. Small scratch under the clasp where I had once tried to carve my initials at age 16. No, it couldn't be. I paid my tab and left in a daze, barely tasting the coffee. By the time I got home, I was already logged into Celine's blog, one she used to run when she was still married, back when she played the role of academic sweetheart with a balanced life. I scrolled through old posts, family holidays, charity events, photos of her grinning at benefits she barely donated to, and then, there it was. Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Caption: a gift from my family's matriarch, honored to wear it. The necklace, my necklace. Zooming in, I could see the clasp, the tiny, uneven scratch where the letter F barely hung on. I felt like my lungs had collapsed. That necklace was mine. Grandma had promised it to me during her last hospital stay. She said, "Francis, when I'm gone, don't let anyone tell you what's worth keeping." You already know. I'd looked for it the night they kicked me out, but everything had been boxed or dumped before I could get to it, and now, there it was, sitting on Celine's collarbone like it had always belonged there. She didn't just steal things, she rewrote ownership, history, identity. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly cold. Even in death, Grandma couldn't shield me from Celine's reach. The spiral started slow but deep. I began thinking back to what else she might have taken, what pieces of me she'd pocketed and paraded as her own. Later that week, I caught up on emails. I'd missed a group thread from extended family, mostly cousins and a few aunts I hadn't seen since Grandma's funeral. Buried in the chain was something from Aunt Marie, a simple line, "We missed you at Easter, sweetheart. I sent an invite to the address your mom gave me, but it must have bounced." Easter? I never got an invitation. No call, no text. I scrolled further. Someone had replied, "Celine said Frances didn't want to be contacted, said she was distancing herself from everyone." My hands clenched so hard I left half moons in my palms. For years I thought I'd been excluded because they didn't want me. But it wasn't that. They thought I didn't want them. Celine had spoken for me. Again. Silenced me by assigning motive where there was only absence. My absence. I opened a blank document, copied the screenshot of the necklace, then pasted the email chain beneath it. At the top, I typed, "False history." I wasn't ready to expose her, not yet. I wasn't after vengeance, not the kind people think of anyway. But I was going to stop pretending none of it mattered. Back in the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. No bruises, no blood. But I looked like someone who'd survived a war no one else saw. I ran my fingers along the edge of the sink. My voice was calm, steady. "The next time someone asks what happened," I said to the woman in the mirror, "I won't whisper it. I won't whisper it." I'd said that out loud to my reflection like a promise, like a contract I'd made with myself. 2 days later, I opened my phone to a group message that hadn't buzzed in months. The kind of thread where people only post family updates, baby photos, and annual get-togethers I was never invited to. I hadn't muted it, but I'd stopped expecting anything remotely addressed to me. The message came from Mrs. Duncan, our old next-door neighbor. Just a single photo and a cheerful caption. "Great to see the Whitlocks all together again. What a lovely evening." I tapped on the image. Celine, beaming. Maura seated beside her, holding a glass of wine like she was toasting something sacred. Oren leaning back in his usual chair like nothing had shifted in the last decade. The dining room looked exactly as I remembered it. The floral wallpaper, the chandelier Maura insisted was real crystal, the wooden table that once had my name carved on the underside, and at the center, a cake. White frosting, gold lettering, "Here's to new beginnings." It wasn't just a dinner, it was a celebration, and I hadn't been invited. Again. I looked at the table and saw the empty chair that used to be mine, the one I sat in every birthday, every Thanksgiving, every Sunday roast. That space was filled now, with laughter, with someone new, maybe just rearranged plates. But it was no longer mine. I looked closer at the photo. The social media tag read, "Family only." My name wasn't even mentioned, just family only. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't cry. I sat down on the edge of the bed, calm and deliberate, and wrote a single sentence into the family group chat. "If you celebrate betrayal, don't expect silence in return." Then I put the phone down and went to make tea. The message sat there, unread at first, no typing bubbles, no replies, just digital air, as empty as the chair in that photo. Hours passed. I went for a walk, stopped by the grocery store, came home, and did my laundry. By the next morning, Oren had quietly left the group. Maura didn't respond. She just blocked my number again, as if that counted as a final word. But this time, the silence didn't cut the same. This time, it told me something. They heard me. They just didn't want to hear more, so I decided they would. That night, I called Marin. She picked up after the second ring, like she'd been waiting. "I sent it all," I said. "The necklace, the emails, even the Easter message." "I got it," she said. "Francis, you're building something dangerous, you know that?" "No," I answered. "I'm just telling a story no one wanted written." She paused, then chuckled under her breath. "I have a folder of my own. You know, screenshots, notes, a couple of receipts you might want." We planned a day to meet, just to talk, maybe build a timeline together. After we hung up, I sat at my desk with an old notebook. I flipped through pages of half-started grocery lists and forgotten to-dos before finding a blank sheet. At the top, in thick black marker, I wrote, "Next falsehood, next move." It wasn't a threat, it was a declaration. I was done being a character in their version of the story. Now I was writing mine. The words still hung on my wall, bold black ink on lined paper. Next falsehood, next move. I wrote it to remind myself not to flinch anymore, not to justify, not to fold. But I didn't think the next move would come so soon or so low. It was a Wednesday morning. I'd just finished prepping my application materials for a national nonprofit I'd been eyeing for 3 years. Everything felt aligned, my resume polished, references strong, timing perfect. I clicked send with a kind of pride I hadn't felt in years. 2 hours later, the call came. "Hi, Francis," the voice said, kind but clipped. "I wanted to thank you for applying and tell you up front that we've decided not to proceed with your application." I blinked at my computer screen. "Is there a reason?" She hesitated. "We received an anonymous email with some concerning language. Nothing confirmed, but given the nature of our work and donor sensitivity, we have to be cautious." "What kind of language?" She paused, then read. "Candidate has unresolved family trauma, a pattern of manipulation, and an unstable personal history that raises questions about long-term reliability." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I'd heard those words before, just not in HR meetings. They were textbook phrases from Celine's lectures. I'd seen her give a talk once on identifying emotional disruptors in close-knit systems. She used the exact phrase, unstable personal history. I thanked the woman, ended the call, and just sat there, staring at the screen. It wasn't just rejection, it was sabotage. Later that night, I brought it up to Marin over tea. She didn't even blink. "I can trace the metadata," she said, already typing on her laptop. I watched as she worked, her face calm but focused. Within 10 minutes, she had it. The IP address came from Round Rock, more specifically, the faculty server at Central Hill University, Celine's office. She used her work computer to file an anonymous complaint, Marin said flatly. And she wasn't even careful. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, then whispered, "You just declared war." But this wasn't a war I'd fight with anger. I wasn't burning bridges, I was illuminating the path, one matchstick of truth at a time. That night, I opened a new folder on my desktop. Inside, I placed everything. Calder's email, Marin's video, the photo of the necklace, the Easter email thread. I organized them by date, labeled them with neutral titles. Then I created a private link to the folder and uploaded it to a cloud drive. I sent it anonymously to a small local journalist I trusted, someone who had once written a piece on misused university funds and who never backed down from a quiet truth. In the message, I typed only, "Truth doesn't scream, it documents." I didn't include my name. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke clearly enough. Then I sat down to draft a message to Maura, not to get her attention, not to provoke, just to say the thing I'd never been allowed to say. Your silence made her believe she was untouchable. That's no longer true. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Some truths don't need a headline. They only need to be known. The next morning, I passed a mirror on the way to the kitchen. I stopped. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch. Not at the bags under my eyes. Not at the way my shoulders curved a little too much from carrying weight that never belonged to me. There was no more hiding behind silence or politeness or the fear of being called too emotional. There was just me, and I was still standing. The morning after I finished my quiet declaration to the mirror, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Calder's name still felt too heavy on my screen. But something in my gut told me this call wasn't casual. "Did you ever design jewelry?" he asked. No greeting, no pause. I blinked, taken off guard. "Yeah, years ago. I used to sell handmade rings to a boutique in Austin." There was a moment of silence. Then he said, "I thought so," and sent me a link. It was an online feature about a recent university gala. The article celebrated Celine's keynote speech on resilience in modern womanhood. Typical. I scrolled past the fluff until I saw the image embedded midway. Celine, wearing a silver-gold hybrid ring, thin band, oval stone, tiny rose-etched engraving beneath the center gem. My design. I'd made it sophomore year and sold 3 limited versions. The boutique owner had tagged them with Francis etched lightly under the setting. The caption under the photo read, "Designed by Dr. Celine Whitlock herself, symbolizing rebirth after betrayal." I put the phone down. It wasn't just that she wore it. She claimed it, called it hers, called it part of her story, her fabricated phoenix tale where she had been the betrayed wife, the survivor, the source of strength and elegance. She wasn't just silencing me, she was absorbing me, bit by bit, word by word. Later that week, I received a message from an unfamiliar name, Janessa, a former participant from a therapy group in Austin. I'd met her once through Marin. The message was short but surgical. "Hey Francis, I don't know how to say this, but I think you should know. Celine used you as a case study in one of our group sessions last year. She changed the name, but not much else. It was obviously you." My stomach turned. I asked if she remembered what Celine said. She said her sister sabotaged her marriage, that you always needed attention, that she stopped trusting women because of you. My fingers hovered over the screen. Did anyone say anything? Did anyone question it? Not really. I think everyone assumed it was just metaphor. No one knew the backstory. I thanked her, then sat still, staring at nothing, for a full 5 minutes. Celine hadn't just painted me as the villain at home. She had broadcast it, repackaged my life as a cautionary tale in rooms I never entered. The ring, the therapy, the lies. It was time. I didn't scream, I didn't storm, I recorded. In my living room, under soft lighting, I positioned my phone on a stack of books and pressed record. I held the ring to the camera, then read the email Calder had sent me. I showed the old receipt from the boutique dated 5 years earlier. I held up Grandma's letter that she'd handwritten before passing, the one where she mentioned my jewelry. Then I played Marin's voicemail, the one where she confirmed the lie about the affair. My voice was steady. No rage, no dramatics, just clarity. I saved the file. Didn't upload it. Not yet. I sent it to one person only, Celine. 10 minutes later, her reply buzzed through. You always wanted to be the victim. I read it 3 times, then typed my response. I just stopped agreeing to be the scapegoat. No typing dots followed. Silence. But this time, I owned it. She had no script to overwrite my version now. Later that night, I sat at my desk, opened a new document, and typed the title at the top. Redemption is mine. It was time to speak, not in the quiet corners anymore, but on a stage she never expected me to reach. I finished writing the last line of my speech just after midnight. The cursor blinked at the end of the document like it was waiting for me to doubt myself, but I didn't. 2 days later, Celine stood beneath the soft gold lights of the Central Hill University ballroom, poised in front of a crowd of faculty, donors, and local press. The event was a celebration of voices in healing, women who lead through storytelling. Her name was printed in gold leaf on the program. My name, ironically, appeared on the seating chart. Guest of family. I hadn't RSVP'd. I wasn't invited by name. But someone had sent that link to the university event committee, and someone else had quietly added me back to their list, not knowing I was already planning my own attendance. But I didn't show up in a dress. I stayed in Austin, watched from a quiet corner of my apartment, laptop open, live stream rolling. The ballroom looked polished, perfect, just like Celine. The MC took the stage. Dr. Celine Whitlock, he said, smiling, has redefined resilience. Her story has moved so many. Celine rose, accepting the applause, her expression humble but rehearsed. And then the lights dimmed. The room fell silent, confused at first. The projector behind the podium flickered. 90 seconds. That's all the video lasted. It began with an image of a ring, my ring, the one she had worn and claimed to have designed. Then came a clipped audio excerpt from Calder's email. She lied to everyone and used her sister as a scapegoat. Next, Marin's voicemail. I saw her. She wasn't hiding from Calder. She was hiding from the truth. The screen faded to black. A white line appeared, scrolling in like handwriting. Frances sees truth. Let her speak. From her grandmother's final letter. Then, the closing words. Not a curse, a consequence. No music, no narration, just silence. The audience didn't know how to respond. Some gasped. A few faculty members shifted in their seats, whispering to one another. One woman in the back stood and clapped, hesitantly at first, then another, but Celine didn't move. She stood at the podium like her feet had sunk into concrete. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for a way out that wouldn't look like retreat. I watched it all from my couch. No champagne, no camera crew, just me, and it was enough. An hour after the clip aired, a student shared it on social media. What happens when the story you're selling isn't yours to tell? Within 12 hours, the video had over 1 million views. By the next day, someone had found an old photo. Me, standing on the sidewalk outside my parents' house, suitcase at my feet, bags by the curb. The caption, "This is what a scapegoat looks like," until she stopped playing. It went viral. 24 hours, 2.1 million views. Requests flooded Celine's inbox, not for interviews, but for answers. Her publisher postponed indefinitely her memoir. The university canceled her next lecture series. Invitations that once flowed in with fanfare vanished without explanation. Calder texted me, "You did it," without screaming. I answered simply, "I didn't win. I stopped losing." The world didn't need to see me roar, it just needed to hear what had been buried. Later that evening, I received a message from Oren, just one sentence. "You deserve better. I just didn't know how to stop her." I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up my journal and wrote, "I never needed a rescue, just the space to rise." And for the first time in my life, I realized I had it. I hadn't seen Maura in over a year, and yet there she was, sitting beside Oren at the far end of a wedding aisle lined with eucalyptus and soft strings playing "Can't Help Falling in Love." Marin's wedding was beautiful, every detail filled with quiet elegance. I arrived late. My flight had been delayed, and the Uber driver took the long way through downtown Denver. I slipped in quietly, brushing past folding chairs and pastel dresses until I spotted the only open seat. Next to them, Maura glanced up just as I sat. Her posture stiffened, a second too slow to recover. Oren nodded with a twitch of recognition. Then she spoke, softly, as if rehearsing it all the way through the ceremony. "We didn't think you'd come." I said nothing, just crossed one leg over the other and folded my hands in my lap. The ceremony moved forward without hiccups, vows exchanged, rings slipped on fingers, a kiss that made everyone around us exhale. I kept my eyes on Marin the whole time. She looked serene, at peace. When the officiant invited the couple to the podium for their first toast, Marin took the microphone, glanced toward me, and said, "And to the friend who taught me that truth doesn't have to shout to change a room, thank you." No one looked my way, but I smiled. And for once, it didn't feel like a statement. It just felt right. 2 weeks later, I opened my apartment door to find Celine on the other side. She looked exhausted, hair unwashed, wearing a coat that didn't fit like it used to. Her eyes darted to my feet, then to the doormat, then finally met mine. "I have nowhere to go," she said. She didn't say please. She didn't cry. She didn't pretend anymore. I handed her a manila envelope, paper thick with signatures, notarized proof. "This apartment is in my name," I said calmly. "And no, you can't stay." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she nodded once, no fight left in her. I shut the door, not with force, not with anger, just with finality. The next day, I sat at my desk and reread the draft I'd written to Oren, the one I never sent. "You were supposed to be my door when she shut all the windows." I hovered over the send button, then deleted it instead. I didn't need to give him anything more. Some words were meant to stay in the dark, because they already served their purpose by being written. That afternoon, I returned to the shelter where I'd been volunteering every other weekend. One of the teens, a girl who couldn't have been more than 17, watched me organize donated clothes and asked, "Are you always this calm?" I paused, then smiled. "No, but I've walked through enough storms to stop arguing with the rain." She laughed. "I hope I get like that." "You will," I said, "when you start opening your own doors." That evening, I came home to a flickering hallway bulb. I got a new one from the kitchen drawer, screwed it in place, and clicked the switch. A clean, warm glow filled the space. I took one final glance at the lock I'd changed a month ago, the one Celine would never have a key to, and I smiled. I changed the lock, but not my heart. Some doors we don't walk through, we close them for good. Not out of anger, but out of understanding that peace sometimes means walking away. What would you have done if your family erased you like a bad memory? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. More real stories, more untold truths are just around the corner.